everyone. I would like to look up the study topic, how long was the serpent allowed to speak to Eve? And this stems from James 4:7, resist or oppose the devil and he will flee. Well, where does he go? Is he omnipresent? I mean, we hear God is in all things, but it doesn't sound like the devil is. And it's very interesting how long he was able to speak to Eve during the original sin. So we need to look, we're going to go in order with the Septuagint, the Tanakh, the King James Bible, and then the New World Translation, and review if there's a timeline, if we can find a timeline. So let's dig right in. Genesis 3:7, 3:13, 3:14, 3:5, 3:18, 3:15, and 17 we are going to focus on. So in Genesis 3:5 we see that the devil, the serpent, says to the woman, ye shall not surely die. He's talking about eating the fruit. He's very cunning, but God made the serpent. And, you would be as gods, knowing good and evil. And the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and she gave to her husband also with her, and they ate. So this is a very present tense. It sounds like Adam is standing next to her directly, while the serpent is speaking to her. The Septuagint makes that distinction. The Lord gets upset. The serpent deceived me, the woman says. Adam says, the woman whom thou gavest to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I ate. And so now the serpent is cursed. And the ground is cursed for Adam and his labors. And the woman, she brings forth children in pain, and her husband is to rule over her. They were cast out of the garden, so that they could no longer eat of the tree of life. And so let's go ahead and let's compare the Tanakh. What are they saying? And they say, you will be like divine beings instead of gods, knowing good and bad. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for eating, she took some, gave some to her husband, and he ate. So in Genesis 3:6, there's not really a distinction of a timeline. From when she's speaking, the serpent speaking to her, is her husband next to her, and then he eats in the Tanakh. The serpent duped me, Eve says. And this is a big thing that comes up in the original sin. The woman was deceived. Adam, created first, head of household, he knew. But is he standing directly next to her? These are things that come up over other literature. But let's focus on what we see in front of us. The King James Bible, Genesis 3:5, you shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. And when the woman saw the tree was good for food, she ate, gave also with her husband. Again, there's no timeline. I don't think we're ever going to get a definitive answer for how long the serpent was able to speak to Eve and whether or not her husband was directly there. And they all concur, the curses, the cursed ground, the pain, labor, and they were banished out of the garden. Let's go over to the New World Translation and Genesis 3. Here we go. Now this is very interesting. For God knows, your eyes will be opened and you will be like God. This is the sneaky serpent, knowing good and bad. Consequently, the woman saw the tree was good for food. Afterward, she also gave some to her husband when he was with her. So this is making a distinction like the Septuagint makes. It's saying her husband, later, after done speaking with the serpent, gets the food from her. Septuagint sounds more present tense, like he's standing right there having the same conversation and making the same decision at the same time. And that's the only thing that I can find in regards to timeline. Because I don't think it's ever going to answer how long the serpent was able to speak to Eve, and was her husband standing next to her. We've got two different scenarios over here, and two other Bibles that are not really clear on that. So again, James 4:7, resist, oppose the devil, and he will flee. Where does he go? And how long is he allowed to speak to her? That was very interesting. What's interesting also is that they don't die immediately. God says, lest you die, when you eat, you're going to die. They grow old and they die. They eventually die. And they are cast out of the garden to stay away from the tree of life. And again, this brings up, was her husband, was he next to her while the serpent spoke? So these are all just great things, and now you see why I am focusing on cherry picking and not doing that. And you really have to compare the scriptures, and this is interesting. So I will leave you with my cherry pick, which I am just wanting to share the good news. Psalm 119:55, during the night I remember your name, O Jehovah, so that I may keep your law. And you can see the New World Translation, King James, Tanakh, Septuagint. They are all concurring, and this is exactly why I pay attention to all these scriptures and have tried to review them. Because going from the order that they were written to the most recent Bible, we have a little bit of differences here and may not have every question answered. So again, thank you, and a couple of these topics that come up we may look at later down the road. Thank you.